Now, we know generally what that means for right now, that the waters are at rest and it's all peace and goodwill for a very short time, possibly. But what that could mean down the road, and just to set you up, Nathan, because if anyone's lost track of the logistics of this, is of course Florida State and Clemson sued the ACC. The ACC countersued. Of course, we've got a grant of rights that initially extended to 2036. We've got a TV contract that has now been extended after these settlements to, I believe, 2030, 31, that calendar year. We've got now an exit fee for Florida State Clemson for anyone in the ACC of $165 million right now, but that decreases $18 million per season to a bottom floor, I believe, of $75 million.
That's right.
And that's pretty much the framework of where this stands. So I think a lot of people initially, including myself, Nathan, thought, okay, this is good short-term news for the ACC, but at what point do Florida State and Clemson feel as though, okay, this is our exit route, this is our path, and more importantly, this is our timing because of television contracts to leave the conference and possibly go to greener pastures in the SEC or the Big Ten, or who knows, even if they get left out of those two, this may be a 3-conference situation here a decade from now.
Yeah, and that's a great intro. It's a good summary of what's happened in the last couple of weeks. The idea, everybody was waiting on the number. What was the buyout number going to be? Wild University on my channel, who's the numbers guy, works for a bank. He understands how the financials work. He did a full breakdown last summer when we covered this extensively, and the number needed to be right around $300 million for the ACC to stay viable once those brands left. And the brands we're all talking about are Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Miami. Those are the lion's share of the viewership that goes there, and so they're the ones who are driving the most interest. And it makes sense because they've been the most successful in college football. So they're looking for a way to get out. The fact that it's not 300 million, it's 165 or 68 is a ridiculous number. It's a number that is not sustainable. It's not enough money that, say, North Carolina left tomorrow to keep the ACC alive. That money would have to be spread out between 16 other members, and it would quickly dissipate and wouldn't be worth much over time. So right now, I think they're still planning. I think you now have more proactive planning by North Carolina, Miami, because they weren't part of those lawsuits from Clemson and Florida State. So now they're getting their ducks in a row to say, hey, okay, we have everything ready to move. We want to stick our hand up and say, okay, we're free agents. Please pick us up, Big Ten or SEC. But the chances that happens between now and 2030, even with the lesser buyout, in my opinion, and I disagree with people on my channel, even partners of mine, I don't see a big reason for the SEC and the Big Ten today to break their backs to bring in any 4 of those brands. I'm talking about just those 4 top ones until 2030, because they're not making around $70 or $75 million each now. So you take a Florida State, it's worth between 60 and 65 million. That's an estimate, but it's about 60 or 65 million in revenue share. You go to the SEC, those guys are going to be making 75, 80. So if you were to bring in that school into the SEC, every one of those schools would have to take a haircut. They wouldn't be able to continue to make the same amount of money. Now there is a proactive part of the SEC contract that says if you come in, this is what we're going to pay you, but that still has to have some things that trigger to bring them on automatically. The Big Ten's even different. They do not have any sort of automatic rule that says if you bring somebody in, this is their value. Notre Dame's the only school that has that. And because of that, any school that comes to the Big Ten would have to have that amount of value coming in the door. So is it impossible that something changes in the next couple of years? Absolutely not. Realignment never sleeps. People can move anytime. 2030 it's really sort of the escape clause right now. But in some way, shape, or form, either the Big Ten or the SEC needs to make a tactical decision. We're willing to stretch to bring these schools into our conference, regardless of what their revenue share is, just to make our conference stronger. And there has to be a reason why. And that's what it always comes back to me on all my stuff. Why would somebody do that? And we can't hope to guess what those reasons might be.
You may have somewhat alluded to this, Nathan, but I want to lay it out there across the board, and
Sure.
certainly correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to bring two things to light here. Number one's going to be that the television network, since there is a TV deal in play and it's locked in until 2031, even though those are great commodities to have for any conference,
Yeah.
for a Fox or an ESPN/Disney to say, okay, all right, Florida State, Clemson, okay, add them to the deal, and to think that the two bargaining parties, meaning Disney and the SEC, would come to an agreement to say, this is what Florida State and Clemson are worth. This is the value they add to the contract. Therefore, you're going to tear up the current deal and we're going to, increase this much, and then it's going to get redistributed this way. It's just not practical. It's not logical or probable that that's going to happen either.
Well, again, the Big Ten doesn't have a pro rata. That's the word I was looking for a minute ago. The SEC does. So the SEC's pro rata clause says if you bring these schools into our conference, we, ESPN, and we, the SEC, are going to support bringing them in at a particular amount, right? Whatever that amount is on the contract. I can't remember. Bob Thompson told me one time it was probably something close to what we're already doing now, if not exactly what they're making now. But the Big Ten doesn't have that. So if the whole idea was you were going to bring Florida State and Clemson into the Big Ten to extend their reach into the southeastern recruiting lanes, that was one of the main pushes for that. The Big Ten doesn't have a way to do that, at least in their contract with Fox. They would have to negotiate a new either addendum to the current GOR, or they would have to throw it up, tear it up, and create a whole new one. And I don't think either the SEC or the Big Ten have any interest in changing what's working. They want to stay with those numbers, and then in 5 years, when the first one to come up is for renegotiations, the Big Ten, when Fox and the Big Ten get back together again in 29-30, now they can say, okay, if you bring in X schools, each one of them is going to have this value. And they just put, it's on a whiteboard, each school's listed, and they have a dollar amount sitting next to them. And as long as it meets their expectations, they can do it. I don't think either conference goes past 20, though, even if they were to do that.
All right, Nathan, play along with me here. So I went to work on the math, and I
Okay.
could be way off on this. I'm going to bring up the video because I posted all the graphics and so forth in regards to my mathematical calculation. So what I did here was I took that 60-40 formula. So that's something I didn't point out as I set this up for everyone. So I had hypothesized this entire time, just out of lack of knowing what the final results were going to be, and just as an easy denominator, I said, let's determine that the ACC is going to go with a 50-50 split, meaning 50% of the revenue is going to be equally shared and 50% is going to be distributed based on TV ratings, popularity,
Right.
what these schools bring to the table. Well, it turned out that the popularity factor is going to be 60% and 40% is going to be equally distributed.
Yep.
So Nathan, what I did was I went through all the TV ratings for 2023 and 2024. One thing is that is difficult, of course, is we've got something called the ACC network that
Right.
has no public ratings that are distributed, for public consumption, but they have to have an idea of what's being brought in.
Right.
So in regards to network television, meaning ABC, ESPN, all the various ESPN networks, there were anywhere from, let's say, 4 or 5 for these particular schools up to like Florida State in that 12-0 season, which they got left out of the playoff. They were on one of the ESPN networks every week. So anyway, this is what I came up with. So I basically converted these ratings into the millions of viewers into a percentage slice for the conference, and then put it into the formula of the 60-40 based on $40 million per school, which the current contract, and again, at any point, Nathan, if I'm wrong on any of this, please correct me because I
Sure.
do not propose to be an expert on this, is that the ACC deal, the current one, averages at 40 million per school over the life of the contract, but that started low, like 32 million, and it's ascending every year. And I think they're past 40 million now. They're on
Yeah.
the upside of that. But I just took 40 million just as a raw number. And what I came out with is that that's the percentage viewership based in 2024. And Georgia Tech was slanted based on playing Georgia, playing
Right.
Miami,
Right.
in particular. So those, but when you shake it all out, there's
Yeah.
2023. Uh,
Right.
and this is just the 60%. This is not
Okay.
the other 40%. There's how I redistributed the money based on the TV ratings. That's for 2024.
Right. Yeah. And Georgia Tech blew all their metrics away because they had a few things that skewed them. Plus, they had a good season last year, so they did do very well in 2024.
There's the 2023 numbers with Florida State leading the way over Clemson,
Right.
Miami, Louisville, pretty much what we would expect right there.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. But what that means is if that formula continues, the Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, Cal, SMU, and Stanford they're going to rob Peter to pay Paul. It's a zero-sum game. So for one to go up, another one has to go down in the ACC. That's the problem with these performance bonuses or doing these brand initiatives is it's a poison pill. For the ACC to stay alive, they have to pay their top brands higher amounts of money, and it's destabilizing. So the ACC, just on its face, is going to take those numbers and they're going to use them for their own good. So, for instance, Florida State's going to take that 51.3 number, and that's the number they're going to shop, right? If that was the number that from 2024, if you took an average. SMU only averages 250,000 viewers over the past 5 years. I mean, it's not good, right? So that
No,
means they're getting what, 3 million if they're getting paid anything. So it's not a final fix. Anybody who's hoping for the ACC to be bailed out by either the re-upping of the contract that happened at the end of January, or by this new ACC settlement, I'm calling it the Great Compromise, and that's a history callback, but it is a great compromise to keep that conference together. All these numbers in front of you basically saying, there you go, 6.5 million for SMU if they were getting paid anything. I don't think they're even making anything.
no.
It just doesn't work long term. These schools, especially, let's just say a Virginia Tech, if you take their number, Virginia Tech, the Big 12 will pay Virginia Tech 35 million, 40 million. They're not going to want to stay in a conference that isn't going to pay them that amount of money. The problem is they need to have a balance. They have to have one place to go and willingness to go. So they all have to be willing to move to a conference that is fairly much a lateral if all things were equal. But you're doing that for stability. You're making the move so that, one, you continue to make your own money. There's nobody robbing from you to pay somebody else. And two, it puts you in a better, more solidified position. Now you can start looking at investment opportunities, private equity, all these other things that they could leverage to make themselves more valuable. These numbers that you're showing here, though, are just, if I was Wake Forest, I'd be, thank you for keeping the ACC together, right? I'm so glad. Thanks for keeping me in the club. If I was Virginia Tech, I would be livid. Because
Yeah.
basically they're taking from me, and I'm not a sub brand, right? I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
MacU or any of these other conferences, right? I don't play in the Sun Belt. I am a power conference school. There's absolutely no reason that something like this I would accept. That's why I understand why North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, some of these brands just don't say, screw it, we're going to pay the 100 and whatever it is to get out, and we're just going to get into the Big 12 and immediately start being more successful. From a business standpoint, that's the only way to go.
So then I took 2023 and 24, put them together, and then averaged them out.
Okay.
And then totaled them.
Right.
So again, we're working off 40 million. It should be higher than that. And I also took I I eventually took, I wanted to show what the numbers would be. And again, SMU and Cal only get a 30% share, and
Right.
SMU's at 0%. So I initially did what the numbers would look like if everybody were fully invested in the
Right.
formula, and then I wanted to weed them out. So then that bumps everyone 3 or 4 million after that.
Yep.
But you see where, again, folks, just to play along on this, everybody pre 2025 is making exactly
That's
according to
right.
this formula. And I'm sure I'm off a little bit at least. And it's a little higher than the 80 million total for 2 seasons, but everybody would be at just 80 million right
Yeah.
down top to bottom. Well, suddenly Florida State's making 43 more million to play football, and they have earned it based on the popularity of the brand. Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech on down the line are far above that 80 million medium. But then you see the likes of, Virginia Tech loses, let's say, 10 million. What also is an interesting look at how much money Stanford would make, but as a full-fledged member, they're not going to receive that. Goes to like 24 million on a 30%. But
Right.
the other thing that's odd in this, Nathan, I don't know how they're going to accommodate for this, but on one of these 2 seasons, Virginia Tech basically lived on the ACC network.
Right.
Well,
Right.
it's apples to oranges in regards to where
Yes.
these teams are placed and what the ratings are going to be. And for as
Yeah.
much as maybe a typical college football fan doesn't believe this, they think they're going to go find the Florida State Clemson game, regardless of where it is. And if Wake Forest and Boston College was on ABC primetime, there's no way they're watching that. Yes, that's largely true, but there is a component there that if you're on, and this can be shown easily. For example, West Virginia and Pitt played on ESPN opening weekend 2 years ago. Game drew 3.6 million.
Hmm.
That was an ESPN2 game last year, 1.1 million.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I mean it's completely broken because you start throwing in these conference networks. One, they're not Nielsen rated, so you're not going to get those stats. Publicly, people don't know what the numbers are, which is always hard from a PR perspective. You want to go back to your broadcasting partner and say, "Hey, look, I need these numbers so I can go to my board and say this is what we would be doing if we were on a different channel." But at the end of the day, two things changed with these new ACC with the new ACC great compromise. Notre Dame is going to be always getting the top market. They're always going to be on the ESPN. They're always going to be on ABC. They're never going to be on any of those other channels. Two, Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, and I think North Carolina might have been in this. No, not even North Carolina. It was Miami, Clemson, and Florida State. They have a preference to play with Notre Dame. So 2 out of 3 years, you're going to be playing Notre Dame. Because why? Because you're the best football brands in your conference. And that means there's less games for Notre Dame to play a Wake, less games to play a Syracuse. And just like Colorado in the Big 12, you want to play these brands because it will inflate your viewership numbers, which then to the world will look like, hey, I'm worth more money because this is what my viewership capital is. So the ACC, I do not see how it stays in its current form as a power conference past 2030. And that's why I think every one of these numbers that you've been showing here tells me that it gives Brett Yormark and the Big 12 a lot of leverage to go to these brands and say, hey, we look at you just like we are. Come join us, and you're going to be much more stable, and we're going to be around a lot longer. And now you've got the P3, right? You've got Big 10, SEC, and now the Big 12. And everybody can look at it. And not many people are going to be able to gainsay it and say, these aren't the best football conferences in America.
folks, we got Nathan Brown here from College Football Mafia. You can catch it right here on YouTube. But when's the next show, Nathan?
My next show is probably tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm working on trying to either get a guest or maybe we'll just do a Rage Against the Machine with West Virginia and the NCAA tournament. That might be a lot of fun. So we'll have to see. Other than that, just follow me on Twitter. I always send out my notifications for not only shows, but all of my tweets, keep you up to date on all college football news, not just Big 12. And yeah, I'm going to just jump over to my channel, subscribe, College Football Mafia. And I think we do a pretty good job over there. So we use real data. We don't, there's opinion. Obviously, we're an opinion show, but it's all based on a lot like what Mark's done here. We base everything on our data that is collected from all these highly respected sources throughout all the broadcasters. So thanks for having me on, Mark. I appreciate it.
Of course, Nathan. If you got a few more minutes here,
Yeah, please go.
you still
Sorry, I
get.
thought you
Oh
were
yeah,
kicking me
oh
off.
yeah. I'm just letting people know where they can find you.
Oh wow, see, I apologize.
Absolutely.
I'm so
No, you're good.
sorry.
You're
I'm sorry.
good.
I thought you were
It-
you were kicking me off. I
Hey,
apologize.
Nathan, I'm a pro. If you do all that stuff at the end, people know you're winding down and you're getting off the air. So you
Okay.
don't do it that way.
Okay. Okay.
You slip these in here. College Football Mafia, everyone. It's right here on YouTube. Follow Nathan's work also on Twitter at B12 Mafia. I also did the TV ratings as we typically do, and I love diving into the TV ratings for
Right.
the Big 12. So my thought there is, and you're well aware of this, in terms of just conference games, Colorado played in the 7 highest rated conference games of the
Yes.
season. They played in all 10 of the top 10 overall games in the conference, including non-conference play. And we're talking about wide gaps. We're talking about, oh, shoot, I can't remember which games outside of Colorado would have been the highest rated, maybe like a Kansas State, Iowa State game, BYU, Arizona State, a few others.
Right.
Anyway, Utah, BYU, of course, even though they played late night, it got a great number,
Yeah, it
etc.
did really. Yeah.
But the Colorado numbers, they're playing Kansas. They're getting 6.7 million.
Yeah.
And again, folks, realize that that doesn't mean that 6.7 million people watched that game. Many more people than that came across the game. That's the average number of viewers at any time in that game that are watching. So it could be 4 million in the first quarter and 9 million in the fourth quarter when it's a great game, or vice versa. If it's a great matchup, but it turns out to be a blowout, 10 million in the first quarter and 2.5 million in the fourth quarter. But that's the average number of people that are watching those games at any given minute during that game. And the Colorado numbers just dwarf everyone else. So, Nathan, from your standpoint, is that good for the Big 12?
I think it has to be. I mean, anytime you get more people to watch the conference, I don't care who the school is, it absolutely will help. But is it a slighted number? Absolutely. You know, Dion brings a production value. People love watching his teams, and I say more power to him. At the end of the day, all the other schools in the Big 12 pretty equal. I mean, you're going to have variance of 250 to 300,000 between different schools, but they'll all get good numbers. They all will average. I think I said last year over the period of the next 5 years, every Big 12 school will average right around 1 million viewers on a week-to-week basis, and that by itself is, I think, a pretty good goal, considering you look at some of these other conferences that they're really heavy weighted at the top, Ohio State and whatever, but then you get farther down, and some of these other brands don't draw necessarily all that well. So I don't think you can look at it in any other way than say it's a bonus.
Folks, you can, if you don't want to stare at Nathan and I totally get it. You can listen to us. We post the audio also on the College Football Show. You can look it up at the Voice of College Football on your favorite audio platform, Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. So you don't have to stare at me every day, Monday through Friday. If you don't care to do that, I get it. But we're here at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And speaking of programming notes, we just want to get this out. Thursday and Friday, we'll be here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time because we got March Madness. We understand that, even though most of the time, Nathan, we just lock in on a football and just
Right.
pretend nothing else exists in the world. We do acknowledge that even college football fans want to see March Madness. So we're going to show up at 11 a.m. Eastern Time and just kind of lead you into tip-off everyone on Thursday and Friday. And then also keep in mind, once we clear March Madness, we're going to add a late-night call-in show that's been requested by many people that say, Mark, you used to be on late night all the time, and now you're doing this 4 p.m. deal, and we don't like it, and we want to see you late night. We will do one call-in show late night every week. and we are going to randomly select that based on your responses. We'll do that every like Sunday, and then we'll let you know, hey, this week it's going to be Wednesday. This week it's going to be Friday, whatever that might be. So we will get that done here in early April, which really April 5th, that Saturday, is the first big slew of spring games coming up. West Virginia, Clemson around the 5th, and those next 3 weeks we'll be here live with spring game recaps.